Yay Networks.
Welcome to this episode of You Crack Me Up. I was about to introduce us like, I'm Dr. A, this is Dr. B. Like when we first started, we haven't done that in a while.
Hey, this is Dr. A and Dr. B, and we're just excited that NSYNC might be getting back together.
So excited. Is a reunion concert, that's a real thing, right?
They're just playing with our emotions. I won't believe it until I see the dates coming up. And
Lance
then I
has
will
purple hair. You look good. He was my favorite.
Really?
Yeah.
That's surprising.
I don't know why, but I think he was the bass.
I mean, JC, that's,
JC
dark
was
hair.
your
That's
favorite?
well, yeah, that's who you associate with who you look like. So I was like, oh,
I
that's who I gotta
intentionally
be.
did not make Justin my favorite because he was the front guy, and I was like, everybody likes him, so I can't like him.
That is I've never heard a statement that is more
4,
you.
Isn't it?
I've never heard a statement that is more you in my life.
So I liked Lance.
I can't like you because you're the most popular one. So therefore, I cannot like you.
Exactly.
It would not be fair.
Exactly how that went. Mm-hmm. Exactly how that went. Okay, well, I'm kicking off our episode, but really I'm going to kick it over to Brandon because he's got a surprise for us. And he has not let me. I could have found out, and he got mad at me trying to find out.
If you wanted to find out, you would have found out when I posted it.
Anticipation. I hate it. I like surprises, but you can't tell me there's a surprise coming because then I lose my mind. So,
but I wanted this on the episode because I think what everyone that is listening to, some people will know. They've probably seen some stuff because I've shared a little bit, or they at least have an idea. But they'll get to go through that experience with you and then be like, okay,
we're
wow, that's
all
interesting.
In this together.
Exactly. So they're going to
High
be
School
going
Musical.
through what you're going to be going through. And then Alex is probably going to have questions like you guys will have questions, and we'll be able to talk about it. So we will go ahead and get into it so we could talk about it. And I can have you guys have your gas, and we'll probably have a pause for a second, and then we'll go back to it.
Oh, yeah, it's bad.
So so the last time that we recorded, I've actually I'd been having like a ear issue that was going on that was like, I couldn't figure out if it was an ear infection, what was going on. And I'm notorious for like overly trusting my body to the point where I'm like, it'll be all right, we'll figure it out. And I just wait until it gets really, really bad. And then I'm like, okay, I've got to do something. And it's like, if I would have just used the things that are there in that short period of time, like I know we always talk about and we try to give you guys natural remedies. It's like there are times when you've put yourself in a place where you should just go to a doctor and probably be on antibiotics for a short period of time and then listen to our podcast episode where we explain to you what you can do after that.
Do you have an ear infection?
So I am pretty sure that I did, but what happened was I had been having that off and on and waiting. Wednesday at like the end of August, we were supposed to go have dinner with friends of ours, and it was so bad I wasn't even really eating. Like I had eaten earlier that day, but we went to have dinner with our friends and let all of our kids play together. And I was just like hanging out, was feeling pretty miserable and not feeling super great. And we went home and I was just like laying down trying to get rest. I couldn't even really, like, I wasn't drinking a lot. I wasn't eating a lot. I felt terrible. And then fast forward to Friday, September 1st at about 5:30 in the morning, Haven woke up to me having a seizure in bed.
Oh, wow.
And so she pulled me out of the bed. She threw water on my face because she did not know what to do.
Like a grand mal seizure, like what you
like
see
I was
on TV.
like I was having a seizure. And again, I don't know anything about this, couldn't tell you anything about this because I don't remember.
There mentally.
One of my friends is a doctor that's literally doing his rounds right now. Like he's about to finish that up and then he's getting ready to go he's going to be working with a clinic. Haven called him. He came over and she called other friends of ours that live like a couple blocks away because they're all sort of closer from like our church community and friends of ours. And they all came over and we're just trying to help. Haven called 911. They sent an ambulance. I came to with two big ass firefighters carrying me out of my house. I can't see because I don't have my glasses on, and I think I'm being arrested.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, what did I, like, literally these guys are like trying to help me get out and like step down out of my door. And all I can see is the lights flashing from the ambulance on my porch as I'm stepping out. And I can't, like, I can see, but it's very blurry. Like I cannot see very well without any of that. And so I have these two guys in there like step down, and I'm like looking around, and Haven was like, you just had this look on your face. And I was just like, hey, you're going to be okay. It's fine. And all I could think in my brain was like, what did I do? Did I hurt someone? Did I do something? Like I would never, oh my gosh, what the hell is going on? And my friend Ben that had came there was like, this was at church last week. He was like, you probably don't even remember much of me being there. I was like, no. And he was like, what was funny was the firefighters went to get you up, and they were like, whoa, you're a big dude. And so they're like, we need another person in here in order to help get me up, because they couldn't get me up. So they literally like walked me out. They put me on the little gurney table thing, and they put me up into the ambulance.
Your girls are still sleeping the whole time?
Girls are sleeping. My friend Ryan went with me to the hospital so Haven could stay home with the girls, get them up, get them to school. Like they could have a normal morning and not know anything that was going on. So
I'm so sorry.
in the ambulance, I remember like moments of this. Like I couldn't think very clearly because they were like, what year is it? And I was like, I don't know, 2022. And they were like asking me stuff about me and like my birth date. And I think I could give them some of that. I remember like some of the ride, and then them like unloading me. We went to Baylor and Plano, and then apparently they gave me a CT. I don't remember that, but I got a CT scan in my head. They didn't find anything. Then they wanted to do an MRI. My friend Ryan is sitting there, gives me my glasses and my phone. If there's anything that you need to know about me, you'll learn it in this statement. Was what I did immediately as soon as I had my glasses and my phone was pull my phone out and text my patient that I was supposed to have first thing in the morning and let her know that I wasn't going to be able to be at the office because I had just had a seizure and we're trying to figure out what was going on. And so instead of worrying about anything else or not, and like just focusing on that, I had to friggin' make sure that my patient was okay and that she knew I wasn't going to be at the office. So, Haven gets a hold of Sarah, like, hey, you're going to have to be at the office, take care of, my patients, do all that stuff. Like she's trying to make sure everybody's where they need to be for everything to be, moving while we're trying to figure out what's going on. The lady's like, we want the CT. It looks clear, but something looks weird. And so we want to do an MRI. Are you claustrophobic? And I was like, fuck yeah, I'm claustrophobic as hell. I don't want to do that, but they need to do it. And so I think she gave me something to calm me down, and I was in that damn thing for 45 minutes, and I had to play games in my head of like what I did was like I waited as long as I possibly could, and then I was like, it's probably been like 10 minutes, even in my brain thinking it's probably been a little bit longer, and I was like, you only have this much longer, and I just kept playing games in my head. I kid you not, like one time I went to move and my nose bumped this little thing that they had like put over my head, and I like barely went to it, and I was like, because I just kept my eyes closed the whole time. I was like, I don't want to see how close this thing is in front of my face because they're loud. It was awful. MRI was clear. Could not find anything. They're like, the only other thing we could do is a lumbar puncture. And I've worked with plenty of migraine patients who've gotten lumbar punctures, and they talk about how terrible they felt afterwards. And they had literally one of the worst migraines or headaches that they've ever had after getting one of those. And I was like, I really don't want to do that. I don't think I have any form of meningitis. Like I wasn't like, I'm a doctor, damn it. Like, tell me what's going on. I didn't try to have that level, but in my brain, I'm constantly like trying to think of what they're doing and what they're testing for. And I'm like, I'm not having any issues like flexing my head. I don't think I have any sort of meningitis. I don't think it's that. Like, I know that you guys want to rule that out. And because I was so dehydrated, they had given me an IV while I was there, and I tried to convince her to give me a second one before I left. The issue was, and the issue I think sometimes with our system is because they didn't find anything, I got sent home with nothing.
Oh, wow.
So also during this experience because I told you Wednesday I wasn't feeling well, and then Friday I had a seizure. During this time, I also experienced my very first migraine. So I get to now understand and know what that feels like. So I had like pain behind my left eye. I had pain all along the left side of my head. My TMJ on my left side was hurting. I literally felt like I had these large nodules on the upper part of my neck. Like I was just like feeling terrible. So even when I was trying to rest, I couldn't rest because my head was killing me. So it's like I'm having fever, my ears hurting, I'm having horrible head pain. Like all this stuff is just, we can't figure out what the hell is going on. And they're weirded out because they're like, an ear infection should not do this. And I was like, well, in my body it does apparently. So I don't know what to tell you guys. So they send me home. We reach out to friends of ours that have an IV company. And I'm like, I'm going to go in the morning and go get an IV. Like, I think me probably getting some fluid back in, that might help. Like, so Haven takes me there. They needed I needed to re-up on you have to literally sit down with a nurse and she asks you some questions. It's through like a telehealth thing. And then they're like, oh, okay, we can give you an IV. And they're like, well, we need to re-up that. We can't do anything until you do that. And we're waiting on her. And so it was like this whole delay of us waiting to get an IV. So I got a high dose vitamin C IV. Haven took me home. I pretty much laid on the couch, tried to sleep off and on, was still having really bad head pain. I would drink water, but then would like throw it up immediately, almost like I was having a hard time keeping it down. I wasn't hungry. I couldn't eat. And so I think it was Saturday night. I was not doing well. And Haven was like, I'm taking you back to the hospital. Like, you're not doing good. So I'm taking you there. So I think my in-laws came over and watched the girls. Like, I have no idea. I was so out of it at this point. Literally we got to the hospital and they brought a wheelchair out and I just sat in the wheelchair and they rolled me inside. Like, I was like, no energy, no nothing. I felt awful. And we waited in the waiting room, and then we went from the waiting room to a room, which was a secondary waiting room. Cause it was like, if it would be like this with like a curtain right here and like you're sitting there, and there's a curtain, and then there's my thing with me sitting right here with Haven, and then there's a curtain and another person over here. And I was just like miserable trying to sit there. And they would not give me a room or do anything until I agreed to do a lumbar puncture. They would not do anything for me. They're like, he has to get that. We cannot do anything without it. And I, just being who I am, and I think I was just in very primal parts of my brain, because I don't think I was having complex thoughts, was just like, I'm not doing it. And Haven was just like, if you'll do it, they'll get us in a room. We can at least get something going. You got to do it. And me, which I've apologized to her profusely, I was an asshole. I was just like, fuck it. If anything happens, this is on you. Tell them to do it. So I think I had rested while they were doing it. I was pretty much out of it. I was so dehydrated, it took them forever to get enough fluid out of me when they did it. Like, that's how dehydrated I was even my cerebral spinal fluid was low. And so all I remember is waking up. We're upstairs in the room. I have these freaking leads all hooked up all over me. I've got my arms are finally now recovered from where they would give me all my medication, all my stuff in this. And then at 4 a.m. every morning, they would come in and take my blood. And I'm like, could y'all do this at like 7 or 8? Like, is there any reason that it's at 4? Because I also have to answer questions. They can't just do it. They're like, Sarah, we need your name. We need your date of birth. And like, I'm trying to rest and recover. And Haven's like, hey, because I sleep hard. So she's like, hey, you have to wake up. You have to answer this question for them. I can't do it for you. Like, you have to tell them. So I'm like, okay. So I'd like wake up. They're like running blood tests on me. They have their student team on it because they're like, this is fascinating. We can't figure out what's going on with this guy. They get some of my blood, so I think that they could do a culture on it. So they wanted to see, like, is there any bacteria that's growing or what's going on? They were trying to figure that out. Every single damn doc that came in tried to do, I think it's Koenig's test on me, the one where you like, every single one of them was like, oh, I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it. And then he'll show up. And
They're
I would
just
be
not
like,
doing it right.
yeah. And I would be like, no, it's not that. Like, will y'all please just like, that's not what's going on. And so, I think the weirdest part, and one of the things that was the hardest, was, so the seizure I had, because they didn't find anything, I'm pretty sure was a febrile seizure. So I think my fever got too high, and that's why I had a seizure. Because there's nothing else that would show. I don't have any history of that. There's nothing that would be like, oh, this is why. Like, that's the only reason why I would have it, was like, I was having a fever trying to burn off whatever was going on in my body, and I think it got too high.
Did you, like, you knew you were running a fever before?
Yeah, I'd been running
seizure?
a fever. Like, I'd been sweating, and like was like, I was in a sweatshirt. I'm pretty sure when I was, yeah, like I knew I was not feeling great.
You just didn't know what it was.
And then I think when I was sleeping, that was what caused me to have, that was my fever spike too high. But the problem is when you have one of those, they put you on anti-seizure medication. And that shit is no joke.
Yeah.
Like, I was dizzy most of the days. I couldn't even get up to go use the bathroom. I think it was like 2 days into being in the hospital, I finally got to take a shower. It was like the most hilarious yet best thing ever, because it's like this tiny thing and I have to like sit in a chair. And Haven's literally standing outside pumping soap into my hands so I could like clean myself. I was like, this is very humbling, but also it feels great to be able to take a shower. This is nice. The freaking pads that you have to put on, though, trying to pull those things off to take the shower that are like to monitor me, that probably hurt worse than anything that was so bad. And then you just have this sticky residue square that's on you afterwards that you're like trying to get off, and Haven's like picking at it, trying to get it off. So because I just don't think there was any way for me to refuse that. It took me like a while, I think, to recover from being on just that specific medication. So they keep running tests on me. They gave me a COVID test when I got there and I was clear. 2 days after that, they gave me another one. I was positive. So I got COVID while I was there.
Garrett laughed.
And it was also
right.
it was just also one of those where they're like, which is weird because they listed it on my chart as like asymptomatic COVID. I didn't have any symptoms. I wasn't having anything because of that.
I think that's interesting. Just as a quick aside, they try to keep you, like, you don't want to spend a whole lot of time in a hospital because that's where really sick people are.
Yep.
So it's really common to get another thing.
Well, you get what are called
sick,
nosocomial infections. So
exactly.
nosocomial means doctor cause, because they're walking around to sick people and they use equipment and stuff and they try to keep it clean and they try to do all this, but you carry stuff from a person to a person. So that can happen.
Well, it's in the vents. It's in,
Yeah.
It's hard to keep everything 100% sterile, even though they do try.
Yeah. So stuck in this room. Haven's literally like taking care of the girls, running to bring me food sometimes because hospital food is not always the greatest. So I lost like 10 pounds while I was there. I literally remember the first time I saw I lost a ton in my face. So I looked like, I was like, oh man. Yeah. I was like, oh, I can really tell. And people, when I was in the office, cause I was telling people and they were like, yeah, I could tell you've like lost like your face. And I was like, yeah, I was like, it definitely hit me there for sure. Mostly just sitting there having to watch. There was fortunately a Marvel marathon thing that was going on that was on TV, and there was Saved by the Bell reruns that would come on during the day, and like whatever you could, whatever you could find, just sitting here watching TV because I was
streaming.
Just like, with everybody doing anything, and Sarah definitely massively stepped up and took care of everyone and kept, the business running and all that. So pretty much everything was going on and happening, and happening without me being there, which was good. It gave me the ability to just rest and try to recover. But it's also just tough because like, I don't want to be stuck in here, but I know they want to figure out what's going on. And so, they're like, we're waiting back on this blood culture. We found bacteria in your blood. We don't know what it is. So we're putting you on this antibiotic. The day after they put me on the antibiotic, the next day I was like a completely different person. So I was like, clearly
wow.
you now have figured out what's going on, and we're starting to fight some of that. They did a scan of my heart because so this is so random and funny that they did a scan of my heart, and I was like, why are
like
they
an EKG?
Yeah, like they were literally like taking pictures and everything, like looking at, I don't know if it was like an ultrasound or like what it was, but they were literally like looking at my valves and my heart and everything like that to make sure everything was okay. And so literally I had to sit there for like another 30 minutes on that one with like a student and a doc, and they're like, and like trying to get all these, and they're like, take a deep breath in and hold and do all this. And I just so happened to be going through a channel, and they were talking about this patient, and they were like, this patient got Streptococcus varians in their blood, and what happens is that will attach to your mitral valves and eat away at them, and you have to get open heart surgery in order to fix it. And I was like, that's probably what they were checking for. Yeah.
Shit.
That came back fine.
Oh,
they
good.
did a ultrasound of my liver because they wanted to look at that, because a couple days in, my liver numbers were elevated and they got worried. And I was like, I don't want to sit here and speak, to like, I don't need them to know my life and to get into all that stuff. But I was also like, well, I don't ever take anything. Like, it's very rare that I ever take a medication or that I ever really do anything. So my liver's freaking out because there's all sorts of medications and all sorts of stuff that I'm taking inside of my body. I'm like, that would probably make sense of why
working on overdrive.
Yeah, it's like my liver's working harder than it has, trying to go, whoa,
Trying
this
to
stuff
filter.
this stuff isn't typically here.
Yeah.
So they got a little worried about that because they took my blood one morning and they're like, your liver numbers are elevated. That's weird. Everything that they would just come back and find, they're like,
That's weird.
that's weird. We
That's
can't really figure
odd.
out what's going on. And I think a lot of times when people go in the hospital, they want answers. And so I think they've been trained and programmed, like, we have to find answers and be able to give you that. And then we feel like we have I'm like, I'm pretty sure I already figured this out. Like, I've been looking up reasons you can get a seizure. Febrile seizure is probably exactly why I got that. My fever got too high. This is what's going on. I told Haven, I was like, I think I'm recovering from the anti-seizure medication. Like, I think it was messing me up.
A febrile seizure too. This is something I worried about when Georgia, she hit a 103 temperature. We're designed to hit 108, right? So it's not necessarily how high it gets, but if it rises really high in a really short amount of time, that's when we get into trouble. So when you were sleeping, you must have had a fever, and then it must have, like, your body went into overdrive or something, right? And so it spiked high really quickly.
And I also think I was so diminished.
Rise.
Yeah, and I think I was so diminished. I hadn't eaten in several days. I was having a hard time getting fluid in. I think there was just, I had given myself so many barriers that my body was, so many obstacles.
Lots of factors.
Yeah, that I was trying to overcome, that it was just like, that was what happened. And so, my poor wife, she's technically, because she was like, that was hard for her seeing me like that.
She's
like,
probably going to need to go talk to somebody.
Oh, yeah.
I think about how you have had to deal with her when you tell her story of having Remy and seeing her C-section and all the blood on the table and like how scared you were. Like, I would bet this is a story she's now going to have to be processing for a long time. I can't imagine what it would be like to wake up to Clay having a seizure in bed.
And I think, again, I think her thing is just always like, I take care of everyone. I protect everyone. I keep them safe. Like, she always feels like she can relax and feel safe because I am that person. I'm watching who walks by the door. Where are the doorways? Is somebody acting weird? Why is that person walking right now? Like, I am that person. I'm acutely aware of everything going on. And I sent her actually this Instagram reel the other day, and it was like my husband while we're walking through the mall, and he's like, what? It was like all those things. And she goes, Migraine. And it's like them singing like some song basically, because they're just like, you don't have to worry about it. You feel like you can relax because that's the person that takes care of you and make sure that you're safe. And so for her to have to be the person in that situation like that, it was just a lot for her to watch me going through that, and to, it was a lot. So we have talked about that of like, hey, I want you to be able to talk to someone about this, work through this. This will be, we'll add it to the list of things that we get to talk about, but it's stuff that we've had to work through. And like, even me coming back to starting to feel normal is one of my things that I've had to tell myself is like, subconsciously, without thinking about it, that happening made me distrust my body and its capability of what it can do. So I had to have this, like, I trust my body. My body is intelligent. My body is healthy. My body is like, it's the fact that happened, and I didn't even think anything about it. It was just one day I was like reading and I was thinking about stuff, and like, it made me super emotional to think about that. And I was like, I can't ignore that. I have to actually address the fact that I have this feeling because of this, and that is okay. That's normal to feel that way. But I need to understand that I can trust my body.
Because it made you realize we're not invincible.
Oh, you are 1000% not invincible. And everyone that we talked to, like, we had our church praying for us, and it was so sweet, the amount of people that reached out and were, whenever we did come back to church, like, man, we're so glad to see you and all these things. And like, I didn't have anything of like, oh my gosh, I almost died. I was just like, man, I had this serious health event. That really sucks. But I think to a lot of people, when they look at that, and I want to be this, but I didn't realize how much an example that I try to be of health. And like, even people were just like, man, when you see that it can happen, like when we heard this happen to you, it's like, wow, it definitely put it in perspective of like, this can happen to anyone.
Right.
And I was like, I didn't even think anything about that's how people would look at it. But it's like, it's true. It can happen to anyone. anything can happen. You don't even know. And it can be that quick. And I honestly think I have a lot of the stuff that we talk about on this podcast and that I do to thank, because my ability to recover and at least get back to like 80-90% of what is typical was probably faster than what most people would go through, because the hospital kept me one more day, and that last day that they kept me there, they wanted to do a liver scan, which anything that happens with that is like, it takes forever, because the liver scan had to happen downstairs at the hospital. So I had to have a transport come get me, take me downstairs. Then I had a tech come in and do all the stuff. Then I had a doc come in and help that person get better images of that. So then she had to do more images. Then they had to call my transfer to take me back up. Then I had some stuff that I had to sign. They brought me some prescriptions that they wanted me to take home. And then I just left, and I joked with my friend Ryan, who works down there, and I was like, I don't know if I did it right. And he's like, no, you're fine. To just, because I didn't know. I was just like, I got my stuff. I'm dressed. Haven's on her way to come get me. I was like, I haven't been outside of this room in days. So I was like, this is great. I'm free. Just like walked over, found the elevators, rode down, and was like, hey, I'm here. And she's like, yeah, that's where I'm trying to pull up to. And I just remember like, it was so hot because I had not been outside in multiple days. And I was like, this is so hot. And I was like, I think my body just trying to get used to that of just like, she's like, what do you need? And I was like, I just feel like I need water right now. Like, it is so, I feel really hot. And of course, Haven's like, do you? And I'm like, it's not that hot. It's Texas.
I'm not gonna faint.
Yeah. I'm like, it's not that I'm having a fever again. And something, I was like, it's literally just the fact that it's Texas and like, it's just hot. But it was, man, it was so great to be able to come home, to see the girls, to get to, I freaking miss them so much while I was there. But, I talk about all this and like get into the story of everything, but it's like, it did, like the perspective change that it gives you on a lot of things has been like the silver lining that I look at of like, I can tend to live in what's happening tomorrow or what's about to happen rather than living in like right now where I'm at. And I think it's made me more grateful for very, very like just weird little things. Like, I'm so grateful on the days when I can go with Haven and our whole family takes Remy to school and drops her off, or when I can be there to pick her up, or when I can take her with me to do this thing, or when Haven and I are literally just sitting on the couch, or when we're laying in bed just hanging out. It's like there's these little tiny things that sometimes it's just like, oh, and then you're on to the next thing that I just feel like I'm so much more grateful for now, because like I said, I do not have any fear that I'm like, man, I almost died or something happened. And could that be the case? Maybe. But it definitely just puts it in the perspective of like, I'm so grateful now to have another day and another opportunity to spend time with my family, to serve people, to take care of, people, to help them. Like, it just definitely put that in perspective of like, I can easily sometimes focus on the negative things or what's not going well or this stuff and get very focused in on that. And now I just feel like it's been great to like not sweat that shit, because I'm like, man, as soon as I was like, well, that sucks, that's over, I'm going to go hang out with my family, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to get the opportunity to do this. So it's definitely changed just some of those perspectives. But the second part that I wanted to get into with this is like, we talked about it before on a podcast episode, and it's hella cliche, but it's true. When you lose your health, I don't give a shit what, nothing else matters. It's all you want. When you're healthy, you have all the wishes in the world. You can do anything. I get it. You're like, well, I got a job, or I got to do this. But I'm like, you could just at the drop of the hat change something. Go work for a new company, go on a vacation, go do something. Like, when you're healthy and you don't feel like that's limiting you from anything, you can do anything. But when you're sick, all I wanted to do was feel better. All I wanted to do was then get out of that hospital. And when I had that migraine and my head was fucking killing me, all I wanted was for that pain to be gone. It's all I could focus on.
Right.
It literally like changed me. It was so weird. It was just like, it was awful. It took over my life.
So with that, like, what was it that the fever was doing to your body that caused the seizure to, like, do they even know? Do you know?
So I think ultimately with that is, it's just like we were talking about, it's like if the fever goes too high and your body can't handle that.
Too high too quickly.
I usually say that it's like when you have a seizure, it's like a neurological reset sometimes. I don't know a whole lot about why that stuff happens. And like, I want to do some research and like look into it. And like, if it's something that people are interested in, we could have a whole podcast episode on it just to talk about it. But I mean, I've taken care of a friend of mine who had a seizure. He was on a backpacking trip in Colorado. He had a seizure while he was up on the mountain. Took him to the hospital. They got him cleared, and his wife drove him all the way home. And I was the first person that she reached out to. And she was like, will you please check out Dwight? Like, he's not doing well. And the first day that she brought him in, I know Dwight. He's in fantastic shape. One of the people that you'd look at him and be like he's like freaking 5% body fat. He always takes really good care of himself. And he sounded like he was drunk when he was talking to me. And this, I didn't have this effect, but like this was him like several days after him having the initial issue. And when she brought him in, I'm like trying to ask him questions, and she's having to answer everything because he's like, yeah, like he couldn't even function right. And then what was crazy was taking him through our process, scanning him, getting x-rays, getting him adjusted. And I was like, bring him back tomorrow. The next day that he came in, he was almost completely normal, like back to himself, like probably like almost 90%. So he came and saw me for a while, and we got him. Like, he's never had any issues since, but it's like, that's really the only other time that I've ever really dealt with or, you know, had anything to do with seizures. Like, I just always describe it as like, it's a neurological reset. Like, when the system gets overrun and overwhelmed and it's too much, it just is like, nope. It's like when someone faints. I think it's just like, it's too much, and we need to shut some systems down in order to reboot the computer and restart things and start fresh. So I think there was a combo of like some of that reset, along with the fact that I was having a fever that went really high really fast, along with the fact that there was some sort of, because with the antibiotic working, I'm like, there was definitely some sort of bacteria that had gotten into my system.
And I was going to ask you that. They never found out. You never found out what it was?
They didn't say any like specific bacteria. They were just like, you have some sort of bacteria in your blood. The antibiotic is clearly working, which we like. Like,
they just gave you like penicillin or something?
I can't remember which one it was, but it was like some 24, like I got it every 24 hours basically. And so I got anti-seizure medication. I got antibiotic that they gave me. And then
wow,
I don't think there was really much else that they would do.
Would they normally give you anti-seizure medication like that, like so quickly when they don't know? Really?
Mm-hmm.
They will oftentimes chiropractic does really well with patients who have seizures. Really well. Like, I know a ton of stories taking care of kids that have seizures. People with the diagnosis of epilepsy, right? Where
that makes sense.
They just had a seizure one day. But a lot of times they just have a seizure one day, and they've only had one seizure, and they're taking medication every day so that they don't have another one, even though they don't know why they had it, or
and
if
those
they were going to have another one.
Now, in my personal experience, hella strong, and it's also one of the first lines that
you've
you
never
get
taken
offered.
it before either, so
No,
like you have no tolerance whatsoever.
You have no tolerance, which is super common, but anti-seizure is actually one of the first lines of defense that they go to for migraine patients. You typically get blood pressure medication and anti-seizure medication before you'll get a migraine medication, because it's what insurance dictates. So insurance dictates that you have to get all that stuff before you could ever be put on a triptan or anything else, as you get an anti-seizure. And I've had so many people describe to me the way that I was feeling.
That lends itself to, I feel like that lends itself to like the inferring that seizures are really common, if insurance dictates something like that.
Well, and what I'm curious about is, like, because it was you're at least assuming that it was temperature related, could taking those seizure medications, these anti-seizure medications, could it cause different things if it's really not even, because don't they like block certain neural pathways? Isn't that how typically those work?
Typically, like, again, I would have to research it.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head right now.
What I would tell you is I had a lot of what I would describe as like vestibular issues because of it. I was really dizzy. I was really disoriented. Like, I would have a hard time knowing where my body was and what's going on. So I would assume that it's a mass neurotransmitter inhibitor more than likely.
Like cerebellum, vestibular system.
Yeah, like you're probably blocking a release of a lot of acetylcholine and other neurotransmitters.
Like your somatic body, like pathways blocking your body.
And so they're like what they're essentially trying to do is artificially keep everything calmed down so that we're not
so there's not that overstimulation that's causing the seizures.
So and so
because some people can have repeated ones. Like, you can have these like episodes and it's like sometimes there are people that will have 50 in a day or 20. Like there are people who have
I
issues
have
like that.
my one of my brother-in-laws.
Yeah.
He had a tumor on his optic nerve. They got it shrunk down, but he has seizures because of it, and they don't even know what the trigger is. Like he will just randomly have them. I don't know if it's because it flares up, and
It's often like
this topic is very interesting to me.
It is
curious.
interesting. Like, and Brandon's been talking about the factors. So a febrile seizure has to do with your temperature, right? Rising very high in a short amount of time. There are also other factors at play, right? He had bacteria in his body. He was dehydrated, right? Who knows what else, right? If you needed an adjustment, right? And you haven't been checked in a long time.
Yeah, that was.
And so this is why I just want to go into a little bit, because I mentioned upper cervical chiropractic having fantastic results with things like seizures and epilepsy. A lot of that is because of altered input, right? And so we're looking at what are those top two bones doing, and if the way that they are moving, that alters the input going from our brain into our body.
So it's essentially a wires getting crossed.
Not necessarily wires getting crossed. It's like, think about it like a highway, and if we have chronic traffic congestion on a highway, but we have the same amount of information needing to go back and forth, now we have a volume problem.
Yep. So think of it as like we've shut down 2 lanes on 75 south and north, yet it's 6 o'clock and we still have the same amount of traffic that needs to get through there, but we have half the ability of where we can actually carry it through.
So we're going to take new routes, or that information is not going to get where it needs to go, or we're going to have too much or too little. And so the tumor on an optic nerve, that absolutely will alter. Think about your eyes as part of your brain, right? They're just like the outward. It is your brain.
I was about to say, the research now shows that your eyes are literally just a nerve that's an extension of your brain.
And so a tumor is absolutely going to alter input based on what you're seeing in your visual field, whether that's altering too much or too little. And then if on top of that, we have issues in the spinal column with things not moving, with the vertebrae not moving correctly, then that's also going to alter neurological input, because your nervous system runs right between all of the bones in your spine. So they're inherently connected forever and always. Anatomically, they influence one another. And so if we have all of these things occurring, then it can absolutely create things like serious issues with seizures multiple times a day for years. And the only fix we have is to take a medication, which is not actually fixing a problem. It's just putting Band-Aid on symptoms, right? Because we can't figure out.
We don't know
why, but we know that this is going to shut the pathways down, so it won't happen.
And you also have to realize there's 2 other factors. So I talk about this a lot when I talk to my migraine patients, because they want to understand it. I'm like, it's what she's talking about, because the reason top 2 bones are so important is when you want to look at the density of neurological tissue within the muscles in the top 2 bones, it's 80%. 80% is up there. Your low back is like 7%. Your elbows, your wrists, your knees and ankles and all that stuff, you're like, it's got to be high, right? No, it's like 2%. Yeah. It's very small of neurological input that it's bringing and carrying to the brain. It's actually more important about where my head and neck is positioned. But you also have to realize when those mechanics are altered, that's also going to cause distortion to your dural lining, which is what surrounds your spinal cord. It's also going to affect the blood flow that goes to the brain. You have to remember, a lot of times, I don't know why it took me a while, and I had to bust out my anatomy book one time, and I was just looking at the brainstem, because like we talk about the brainstem a lot, and we focus more on like what we consider like the posterior portion, like what's on the back. But you have to realize the brainstem is 360. It has stuff that's around it. Well, on the anterior, what's called the front portion of the brainstem is what's called your circle of Willis. Your circle of Willis and your vertebral arteries are the only things that feed blood flow to the brain.
And they go right through that top bone.
So if anything is altered or distorted there, which can easily be done over time with stress, with trauma, with a seizure, with things like that going on over time, and maybe there was stress and trauma and then also a seizure on top of that. We're talking about having things now stacked against us so much that your body can't overcome it, and boom, we go into an episode, and boom, we go into an episode, and boom, we go into an episode.
Like the cup's so full full, right? And then you just pour like a little bit of regular stress on top, but because the cup's already so full, now it's overflowing. And instead of your brother-in-law getting migraines, right, he gets seizures.
Mm-hmm.
And I would bet there's probably some level of head pain that comes with that. It's very rare that there would be a disconnect of that.
He gets
Yeah.
grand mals on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So, it wipes him out. And it's so devastating to see, too, because it's just like it drains him after. Like, you ask him, like, hey, how's it going? And he's just
Is he in Dallas?
No, so
I was gonna say, Brandon.
They're in Oregon. He's gonna be next week.
They're in Oregon?
Yeah, he's
I
gonna
guarantee
be
you I
here.
could find someone. There's already like there's a couple people that I know. They don't necessarily, but it's
He's been that way for the majority of his life. Like he had it when he was little. Like so he's older than me. I couldn't tell you the exact age, but he's significantly older than me, and he's been like that since he was like I want to say like 12. Like it's happened all
the
of his
thing
life,
I always
and
say
it's
is like
terrible.
it's always at least worth a shot to see. And the times that I've watched, it's just like the change, especially with the type of work that we do, being upper cervical focused and doing all the stuff that we do to analyze and make sure it's like
It's not gonna hurt. It can only help.
it can only help. I also want to mention, because I don't want it to sound like it's this and it's only this, there's also been proven that there are certain forms of, because we were talking about CBD earlier, there are certain forms
They've tried
of
that as well.
pure CBD that you can do. This is why I tell people, if that works, okay, then that's a good sign.
Yeah.
I still would have them check. That's actually a good thing. I want to say it's like, I can't remember the name. It's like Black Widow or something. There's a strand. There was a lot of people where their kids would have these epileptic seizure. They would be having issues. There were people that moved to Colorado when they legalized it because I think it has a combo of THC and CBD.
I think it might be called White Widow.
Yeah, I think it's something like that.
Sorry, that was my favorite strain of marijuana.
I wouldn't know anything about that, but we could do an episode on it if we want. Just as a guess, but what happens is there were parents that were moving to Colorado when they legalized it just to get access to that because it was shown to be able to help.
Wow.
But I think the problem is, and this is part of why we do these podcast episodes and do this, is like there needs to be more awareness, and we need to also be willing to go, listen, if it were my kid, I would do anything. And I legitimately mean anything. You tell me that I go to South Peru because there's a guy, like, if it was something like that, I would figure it out. It's how my brain works. It's how I'm wired. It's part of why I love working with people, because I'm like, listen, we're going to figure this out. I think I play a portion in this, and then I'll gather up all the people that I know and the knowledge that I have, and we will figure this thing out. It's part of why I'm like, if you want someone in your corner that's going to have your back and advise you the best that you can, I would like to put myself on that list because I'm going to give it to you straight. And now, in all honesty, what I would tell you is the biggest takeaway that I have from this whole situation is there's two things. First of all, don't ignore something, especially men. You guys know we've talked about this. And it's one of the things that I'm still trying to figure out, like, what I want to call it and what it is. It's like, I want to be able to help empower men, but it's like, stop ignoring things for so long that it then becomes such a big issue that it creates way more problems. Like, if we would have dealt with this sooner and much earlier, and then also been adding in lifestyle factors that would help us, we don't have to age like our grandparents or our parents or the people that we see around us. We don't have to live like we feel like. We don't have to have this idea of what aging looks like. You can get ahead of that sooner. And guess what? Sometimes that's going to require traditional medical route. And also then you are going to need to have somebody that is by your side to be able to guide you. Like, I'm literally talking to some people so that I can do a detox. I'm probably going to change my diet up for a little while. I might go back to the carnivore in order to just, like, I want to do everything to get my body the best advantage for me to be able to get back to normal as best I can. But I will also tell you, here's what I learned about our medical system. Our medical system is not there to get you healthy. They actually don't give a shit about getting you healthy. They want to take whatever it is that you're dealing with, where you are sick, and get you back to where you were before. And I hate to tell you, it probably was not healthy.
Wow. Hold on. I want to pause on that one. That's so accurate.
When you get to sit there and you can't really think, I was just like, this is eye-opening to me.
It's really interesting because when we take on, like, sometimes we work with people who were in car accidents, right? And their auto insurance pays for something like chiropractic care. And part of that, it's very clear. Our job is not to get people super healthy and well, although this typically happens. It is to make them whole. And insurance will only pay for
Getting them back to
where they were before. So if the car accident caused some neck pain and some headaches, but this person dealt with fibromyalgia, our goal is not to actually help them heal from fibromyalgia. It's to get rid of their neck pain and headaches, and that's it. Nothing else. Insurance will not pay for anything else because it's just to get them back to the state that they were in before the thing.
Most times you'll actually address both, and in that period of time,
it's impossible not to when you're working with the nervous system. Because I don't pick and choose. We're just gonna do things that get you healthy.
Yep, I'm working on this, and if other things happen, hey, cool.
Cherry on top, right? But what you just said about the medical system and about the hospitals is right in line with that, and so important for people to know. You go in with something, and their job, what I was thinking when you were talking was, their job is literally just to keep you alive.
Yes.
So you don't die.
We're triaging you. What's going on? We're at war. What is going on? You lost your leg. Cool. I'm going to tie this shit around it. It's going to stop the bleeding, and we'll
we need
figure
to
it
make
out
sure
later.
you don't go into organ failure or sepsis or whatever the case, and then they're going to discharge you.
And
right? They're not going to help you rehabilitate or whatever the case.
There's a need for that.
100%.
Far too often, because we're unhealthy and because we just don't take care of ourselves and because emergency situations happen, that needs to be there. So my profession is known for shitting all over of like, and all this stuff. And I'm like, listen, how about we all just shit on the pharmacy system? Because let's be honest, that's a lot of what's causing the problems. Doctors are legitimately there, but their main focus is you came in with X, I'm going to run tests for Y, and then I'm going to get you here, and then cool, and then they send you off.
Well, why would they do that? They get their kickbacks from the people that come in and say, hey, push this drug, push this drug, push this drug.
Because I'm fortunate that we talk about stuff on the podcast, and I have a lot of things in my tool belt that helped me get back to better faster, but it took me a couple weeks, I could show you my Whoop data, but I would do nothing, and my day strain was double what it would normally be doing. Like if I had just gone to work and worked that day and then didn't do anything, my day strain would be around like a 5 or 6. Literally sitting at home, doing almost nothing, only helping with a couple of little things and playing with the girls. I'd be at like a 8, 9, 10 just off of doing that.
After being sick.
After this. Yeah. I would also be in a high, so one of the things they have now is a stress monitor on there. And I would be, a couple weeks ago, I was in high stress for 4 hours. It'd be like, you were in high stress for 4 hours. The other day I was in high stress for 9 minutes. So it was just like, I actually didn't even start working out or doing anything until that came down. I had a day where my recovery went up, and my day strain was like it was like a 5 basically. And I had worked that day and take care of patients. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to go. And I went to like my rec center. I sat in the sauna. I did like a little bit of stuff. And then I was like, okay, I feel all right. I was just like easing into it. When I went back to my CrossFit gym, I hadn't been in a little while. My coach was like, hey, there he is. And I was like, yeah, I kind of need to talk to you. I need to tell you what happened. And I need you to just monitor and watch me. And I was like, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to be taking it easy. I'll probably be doing some things on my own and try to participate, but not get in the way. But it's like, those are all things that I think helped get me back to feeling more like me, and probably like 90 to 95% is where I would say I'm at right now. Like I'm still having some, like I'll have great days and I'll have a day where my jaw still is bothering me a little bit, or a little bit of my ear, or just like some random stuff because my body is still working through a lot of this. But I think about somebody because they didn't give me like, here's your protocol, here's the things that we want you to do. We want you doing this and implementing this and doing these. It was like, none of that. Here's your stuff. You're out. Like, see you later.
Well, I think that's really where it breaks down. And like you said, it's needed. Time and place is everything, right? We can only exist because something like that exists.
Do not come to me when you are in an emergency situation like that.
It's so needed and necessary. And I think it breaks down when there is no, okay, now here's how you move forward. Here's how you move on with your life. And even if they don't know, because that's not their area of expertise, I think it's a huge, crack in our system when the ball gets dropped of. And also, here's a referral. Here's a referral. Here's a short list of people that you can now go see that will help you recover and rehabilitate.
Not one
From
person mentioned I should be on
chiropractors to PTs to therapists to, to IVs, like all of the above.
Yeah.
Like that would be super helpful to
Simplest
nutritionists.
thing.
Like,
After being on an antibiotic, you should get on a probiotic.
yeah.
That was never told to me once. I just know that because I know chronic overuse of antibiotics can start to cause problems. And we talked about the gut issues that can come with that and all these other things.
Your bugs.
I just know
Your
when
bugs.
I just know when my bugs got out of control, we're going to get rid of some of these
Had
bad
a lot
bugs
of
that have
bad bugs in
overgrown.
your
Yeah,
blood.
that had overgrown. So it's like we're wiping those out, and then I need to be able to put good bugs back in. So that was one of the first things we did. We were very fortunate that a lot of people were so sweet. They gave us we had a gift card to Whole Foods, and I was like, I'm going to buy some probiotics.
It
with
is
this.
pretty wild, Brandon. Like they found bacteria in your blood. You had a grand mal seizure. So you were probably, I would say you probably, I'm amazed your liver enzymes probably were elevated because I would imagine you could have been septic.
But that's what's interesting is
Like-
they
like
weren't
it-
elevated till 2 days after being inside of the hospital.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it was
wild.
the response to all
But
the stuff
that's
that
really
was being put in my
what
body.
what I'm saying though. Yes. And what I'm saying is it could have easily
Been
turned
worse.
that way, been worse. Yeah. Where
Oh, and that's what
know?
I'm telling you. I potentially let it even get that way where if I started having an ear issue, I went and had somebody look at it. They gave me some sort of antibiotic for it. It fixed whatever the problem was, and then we were good. And I've had ear issues for a long time, majority of my life. I had ear infections when I was little. I've had ear infections in my, I can remember getting one when I was like 19, 20 years old, and I was like, what is it? And they're awful. It's horrible.
That's
it's this pain
wild.
that
I
you
just
can't.
get an
I
ear
get
infection.
sinus infections all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So I've
I
just
dealt with
always-
swimmer's ear a couple times.
Yeah.
But that's it.
So I've just always had that. So it's one of those things of I am fortunate that there are people that take care of me, and I do get checked regularly, and I do these other things. But even so, with all that stuff, it's like anyone is susceptible to that. It can happen. What you have to realize is if you'll put it in the perspective of what stuff matters the most and what's most important, it's like what was most important is me being there for my family. Like they're so like anything can be worked for good. There can be gifts and things that come from a situation. And so I absolutely take that. And it was, the lesson that I needed to learn. But there was also just like, it could have been prevented and it still needed assistance from other people. I needed to go get it checked out. I needed to do all that. But I let it get to such a point, and I'm notorious for that. Notorious for that. Sore throat to the point where it's like up and in my ears, and I can't swallow or chew or eat. And I'm like, I think I should probably go do something about this now. And Haven gets it I get her, and she's had it for 1 day, and she's like, how have you been like this for 10 days? And I'm like, I don't know, because I'm crazy. Like it's part of why I love what I do. I trust the body so much. I think the body is one of the most amazing self-healing organisms that if it has all the things that it needs, and if the nervous system's functioning, and if it's like a perfect orchestra of everything working together, I trust it to that level no matter what. So when you tell me something and nobody did that, but if it was like you were to tell me something of like, well, this is what happens in the body. And it's like, if you were to do something to diminish the power that the body has, I would disagree with you. But I think, like I said, there's a need and a place for those things, but I need our mindset to shift around the fact of they don't give a shit about getting you healthy. It's not health care. It's sick care. You are super sick, and we're going to get you back to some level of baseline. And in all honesty, if somebody's eating poorly and not exercising and not doing some of the things that we talk about, I cannot imagine what their recovery time is like, because I'm still working on and I've been super blessed to be able to be back to my normal schedule and feel like myself, and only have these like little stints here and there of just like trying to get back to normal. But it's like, I think of like a person that doesn't do a lot of things to take care of their health because they don't have time, or they're not focusing on it, or they're not prioritizing it.
It reminds me of that conversation we had a few episodes ago about catharsis and titration, where like the event you just had was a very cathartic event, like full on trauma to your body, right? Your body's going through an event and it's dealing with a lot. And you do a fantastic job at the non-sexy things, right? The unsexy things.
Yep.
So you titer yourself daily. You keep your nervous system in a certain state regularly through tools and habits and routines, so that then when you do have an event, that is traumatic, right? To your body, maybe not, I mean, it could be mentally, but traumatic in the sense of like, yeah, your body's going through some serious shit.
Physically traumatic. Yeah.
You are able to recover at a faster rate in a higher capacity than somebody who, follows a typical American standard diet, doesn't exercise, is a workaholic,
follows a typical American,
decompresses with alcohol every night.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like the very stereotypical things that where they're just not taking care of themselves.
The stuff that probably got you where you were, that you just continue to perpetuate thinking you can get away with it.
Yeah.
Oh, I can get away with it. I'm okay.
Until we can't anymore, right?
Until you can't anymore. And that's, I also want to mention, like, people are going to be like, well, what stuff are you doing? Because you tell us stuff, but I bet you aren't doing, I bet you're like doing some super secret thing that like nobody knows about. And it's like the only thing that I haven't got back to yet, which I think it's time, I've just been trying to be smart, is like I haven't done any cold exposure yet. Most of that is just like out of convenience of the schedule of like, I'm trying to get my schedule back to normal. It's also a busier season in the office. So, I don't want to make any excuses. I want to make time for that. But doing cold exposure is on my list. Doing sauna is something that I've been implementing. Getting outside. I have been doing all this, like watching videos and research and all this stuff. Like, I think we are meant to be in nature, and we just don't do it enough. You're meant to be outside. You're meant to be exposed to things. You're meant to walk through nature. You're meant to take that in. You're just meant to go outside and do that. And like, that's a priority for me right now. So there's like a park that we like to go to that I'm trying to prioritize scheduling, so we could take the girls and like take them for a walk. The last time we went there, I think we told that story on here. Remy found a turtle. It was like a whole thing. We had a lot of fun. It's like getting outside because you're getting sun exposure. If you go barefoot, you're earthing. So you're literally having a transfer of positive and negative ions in your body with the earth. That's part of what I'm doing, but we've talked about that. One of the things that I've been doing adamantly every morning is my humming. So humming stimulates your vagus nerve. So I've been doing like breath work along with humming. That has been like, in the morning, I will feel so much better after doing that. And it's one of those things that I think we take for granted. Like, the more I've researched a lot of stuff, and like I'm obsessed with like Gary Brecka's stuff with 10X Health and like trying to learn about that. Cause it's like, why is everyone doing this? And why are the people who do this like getting crazy results on like how healthy they are and what's going on? And it's like, it's very simple. It is, I mean, some of that stuff will cost you an arm and a leg, but a lot of the things that he's doing is getting you back to super simplified things. And that's one of his things. 8 minutes of breath work. So 30 breaths, like literally just like as deep as you can get. Like, and I always tell people, I'm like, most patients I work with, migraine patients, they'll do 5 and they're like, I thought I was going to pass out. And I'm like, that's how under oxygenated you are. Like, we can't even get your diaphragm to work like that. We can't even get your lungs to fill to capacity. So we're not working our lungs and we're not oxygenating our body. So I always tell people, start with whatever you can do. If it's 6 breaths, that's fine. But try to go for 30. After your 30th, what you want to do is do a long exhale, and then you want to hold that breath as long as possible. Once you've done that, you want to take a long breath in, you want to let that out, you want to hold it again, and then you're going to go through that again. 30 breaths, let it out, hold it, breath in, let it out, hold it, and so you're doing that 3 times. That's of trying to get as many as you can.
That's pretty advanced.
It is, but you're talking about 5 to 8 minutes of breath work. And like I said,
no, I know, but
most people aren't going to be able to,
Yeah.
But the changes that it'll make for you when you're hyperoxygenating your body, it's ridiculous.
Definitely something to
And
work
even
towards.
If you legit started with 10, do a 10 to 15 second breath hold and then do that and you start building up to it, it's like, if you're exercising regularly, you're getting stuff like that where you're working your lungs and you're working your diaphragm and you're working that system and you are oxygenating your body. But if we're not doing that a lot, then it has to be something that we focus on. This is what we talk about. That's not sexy. That's not cool to talk about. It sounds hard and you're like, shit, I might faint from that. And it's like, I understand that. So take it easy.
It sounds, I think one of the problems is it sounds so simple that people think that can't really do that much for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to skip it. Kind of like stretching. Like if you're one of the people that like does a hard workout and you're like, I'm not going to do the 2-minute cool down stretch. I'm peacing out.
See you later.
Like, yeah, then right, then that's actually
I'll just
that
raise
actually
my
does a
hand
lot
and say
for
that's
you.
been me. I've had times. We've all been
We've
there.
all
We've all
been
done it.
there because we think it's like,
I worked out. I did what I was supposed to, and it's like, yeah, there's
I did the hard
after.
stuff, and it's like, but
Yep.
there's like these slow parts that are equally important and beneficial in an entirely different way.
And so I want to mention that because I think those are things that I'm not doing some crazy stuff and I'm like, oh, I'm taking this green tree root from, Africa that's doing this and I found it. No, I don't tell anyone about it because I want to be the only one that's got it. It's like,
My
I don't
precious.
have some secret like that. It's, making sure that I'm getting my,
You're saying that. I would love to see an episode on the things that are used in other countries, like plants that are banned here in the U.S.
Oh, all right.
There's a bunch of like different like
because there's plenty of that
There's
stuff.
plenty
Yep.
of that stuff.
yeah like supplements that you can take that are banned here that have been shown to even like shrink cancer cells.
Yep. There's also a lot of stuff that has a lot of hype, but there's not necessarily a lot of
There's no substance behind it.
there's not a lot of stuff that's behind it, or the ones that you're using. Like, well, I'll just use the example because it's hella hot right now. Is ashwagandha, and it's like,
I was about to say,
Yeah.
drink apple cider vinegar.
like
and
women need it for this. It'll do
Ashwagandha.
this.
So
lion's
hot right
mane.
now.
Yeah.
Ashwagandha's so hot
Ashwagandha
right
is so hot right now. And like men need it to, you don't need to take the little blue pill. You usually need to take ashwagandha, and you need this, and it's, it's a
Take beef liver supplements.
and you
I would
can.
say
I
that's
have
the one
some.
too.
Like it's
Very
fine.
effective, but it's also like super trendy.
It's
So
and,
what-
and
what
it's
are the
okay for things to be
facts?
trendy. Like just look at it and take it in, and also take account of
Breath work is also trendy.
hella trendy. So is nervous system care. Like
It
nervous
is.
system regulation is hella hot right now.
I just want to say discernment. Just because somebody says that they are an expert or they do this or I'm a guru and I have this and I do this does absolutely not mean they know any of what they're talking about.
Liver King.
Listen, the problem is the principles that guy is talking about are great. It's the fact that he couldn't handle the fact that if he didn't have a certain facade that he was presenting, that it wouldn't be taken the way that it is. And it's like, he actually, I think, did himself, hopefully, I don't know, I haven't seen a lot about him, but I think he did himself actually more service by owning it. And he's gone on podcasts and he's talked about it. And he's like, I was actually super insecure and thought that if I wasn't doing these things, then it wouldn't carry over, because the ancestral tenets that he would talk about, there's nothing wrong with those. He's talking about getting outside. He's talking about getting cold. He's talking about bonding with people around
What, sunning your balls?
There's some
like,
research
that's
that
what I-
shows that
that's-
that's
it's those
not-
Your
things.
butthole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some research that shows that can cause cancer. So, and again, I only have seen just a little bit about that. And it's like, we need to be careful about what we're doing. I would actually love to talk about that and like do a little bit more research, because I
I've
think
seen that
there's
from quite a few people, tanning your bum.
for real. But I also think we've done this thing where it's like we've terrified you of the sun and make you think that you have to be overly protected from it. And it's like some sun exposure is good for you. You need it. It produces vitamin D in your body through your skin. You have the
And
ability to
melatonin.
do that.
That seems to be the
For
thing
free.
though too, is the overcorrection and then or the undercorrection.
It's like a pendulum swing.
Yeah, say like you need to stay away from the sun, and then now we're going, there's you need more sun, and then now people are coming up with these different things that's like, this is about the sun, do this, and then you end up in a whole like homeopathic nightmare.
So
where you're avoiding all of your symptoms until you're in the hospital.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And I won't mention what it was specifically.
Discernment.
I won't mention what it was that we were specifically talking about before the episode, but that's the example. Is just like one side is going to go, I knew that was BS, and I'm so glad that this is happening. And the other side goes, they're trying to take it away from me, and it's the only thing that works. Like, unfortunately, you're never going to have 100% over here, 100% over here. And I understand that. And I actually don't think that you should. I think there should be a place where, like Haven and I were talking
It
about
can't
it.
be all or nothing,
Yeah.
and it's never one size fits all.
Like Haven and I laughed the other day because we were just taking account of like some friend groups that we have. And it's just like, she's like, it's so interesting that we're friends with these people, because when it comes down to certain things that they, believe, or their lives, like certain things, it's like, we don't agree with that. And I'm like, yeah, but I want that. I want to be able to be connected with people and be able to say, I'm totally down to have a conversation with that, and why I think this versus you think that. And hopefully you could have that conversation if you want to, but that not be something that's like but I still love that our kids can hang out and that we could be friends and that I can still want what's best for you. That's fine. I don't have to, like, we've been weaponized against one another when we don't need to be weaponized against one another.
Right.
You feel that way? Cool. That's fine with me. Well,
I was not prepared for this story today. It was not a good surprise. I think you've clearly processed a lot. You were able to tell us about something really intense and traumatic that happened. I know that's probably like one of the scariest things you've ever been through because you have a family that relies on you and it's not just you, and so I appreciate you sharing with us, and I'm
this
glad
is my
you,
therapy.
you
This
seem
is
to
my
be-
catharsis. We get to talk about stuff on here, and I
Yeah.
like it. I like
Well,
to share it with you guys and you guys.
And you seem to be more so on the other side of it now, and I'm glad for that. And I'm grateful you shared with us all the stuff you're doing and your thoughts around it. 'Cause I
And
think
if
it's gonna
anything changes, we can have updates later. That's fine. We can talk
Yeah.
about it. Like,
Yeah, and
you
I think
know.
it's going to help a lot of people. What I think the blessing of us being doctors and having struggles and knowing, we have confidence, but also we walk in humility. It allows us to help so many people because we can relate to them. And now you can relate to people in an entirely new way.
Which we didn't even get into, but that has been something of like, now I understand what you've gone through and now I understand why
You've been
you're
in the medical
frustrated.
system.
Yeah.
You've had seizures. You've had a migraine. Like you've been at the mercy of your health and doctors at a hospital, right? That sent you home and then you had to go back. And,
Exactly.
and like, that's a really fucked up process. And you had to do it as the head of your family, and it's just really intense. And I'm proud of you for talking about it and doing what you need to do in order to get well.
I also want that to be the title of this episode. The migraine doc had a migraine.
That's a good
Because
time.
everybody always asks, and I'm like, I never have. And I'm like, now I'm on the list and it's happened. And I've been put in the system and flushed out. And now we can talk about it even more. And I can relate on a level that I could not before.
Yeah. So if you, I don't know, have a family member or a friend or you yourself have dealt with stuff like this, I mean, you're not alone. I know we always say this is the podcast you listen to feel heard, and hopefully you feel seen and heard on an entirely new level.
But I'd like to get some people on as guests too. So like maybe ask some questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
We could do
Along
that.
those lines.
I'm actually on TikTok live right now and we've had several questions on here. So I think eventually it would be cool to do something live where people can ask questions while we're going through that and maybe have like some little mini topics and then allow people to have the ability to interact with us while we're doing it.
We can put that on your TikTok. Like we should make an announcement for when we're recording next so that they know,
Perfect. I
okay,
like that
you're going to
idea.
be live.
Well, and I'll look into also
Yeah.
being able to plug this whole system into
YouTube.
while we're recording it. Actually send it to the TikTok. The
perfect.
problem is,
we talked about
is the orientation and
how
the
we have to
scale
do
of
it.
because it is vertical
But I
instead of
know,
horizontal.
but you could do it like I've watched people be able to display their stuff and do that and have like
Okay.
with the
I'll look into
there's
it.
so much stuff that people do now with live on TikTok. It's crazy. So there's definitely got to be a way that we can have that displayed. But anyways,
You've inspired me to, like, we should do an episode with me just talking all about like Georgia's health stuff.
okay, let's do it. Now we have all these idea episodes. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Like we always say, share this with someone that you know needs to hear this episode, that you feel like it would make an impact for them. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, share, leave us a review and let us know what you think. And we'll see you on the next episode.
See ya.
Bye.